Hi, Thriller Recaps here. Today, I am going to explain the movie Jawan, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share and subscribe if you enjoy this. A crew got on the train one after the other, following their hacker's instructions as she manipulated the train's weapon sensory operator, leaving no suspicion or cause for alarm. She also caused the traffic light to malfunction, which led to an accident. Their plans went smoothly as Alia was late for her exams and needed to board a train. She got on the train, and now they were all in place. They awaited the arrival of their ringleader. The train came to a stop, and he got in, dressed like an old man with bandages on his face and arm. He lay down on a chair and waited for the right time to strike. The train moved smoothly for a while before the hacker redirected its movement and closed the system used to monitor the train. It took a harsh turn, causing some passengers to fall from their chairs. Just then, the crew brought out their weapons and advised the passengers to sit still. A policeman on the train tried to put the situation under control as he grappled with one of the ladies with a weapon. He ordered the rest to lower their guns if they wanted the lady to stay alive, but they all stood still. Their ringleader stood up and headed towards the man. He told him to go back and sit, thinking he was just an old man. Before he could process it, the man attacked him and tied him down. He ordered the passengers to sit still, or they would end up like the policeman. He then asked what was the most important thing to him, and the man said his mum. Vikram asked how old his mum was and told the passengers to stand up if they were within the age range of his mother. Women stood up, and in no time, the hacker allowed the CCTV in the train to transmit back to the train station. Then, their ringleader shot all the women, and the train officials were shocked. He demanded to speak with someone in the system who had the power to negotiate with him. All hands were on deck, and they called in Chief Narmada Rai. She spoke with him, and he expressed his concern about how the citizens were taken for granted by the government. He asked her to sing a few lines of the song, Uneasy, and then demanded to speak with the agriculture minister. The song had 5 minutes and a few seconds, and he needed to speak with him after that, or every passenger on the train would be killed. The Minister for Agriculture came on board just in time, and he conversed with the hijacker. He asked him if the digit 10,281 rang any bells for him. The minister could not understand, so the hijacker explained. During his regime, 10,281 farmers had committed suicide due to the high interest rate on loans. The interest rate to purchase a tractor was 13%, while the rich only paid an 8% interest rate to purchase a Mercedes. He stated that farmers were mistreated because they were poor, which was not supposed to be. He then ordered the minister to make a payment of 40,000 crore 97 lakhs for the release of the passengers. The minister explained that the amount was too huge to cover without a businessman. The hijacker told him to pick the next business call after he dropped the call. It was Kaylee, one of the most influential businessmen and the father of Alia, whom they had succeeded in getting on the train after the road accident. He had committed many atrocities, like forcing people to sign over licenses to build his company in their city and then killing them. His daughter was forced to call him, and he reached out to the minister, willing to pay any amount to get his daughter released. His daughter stood up on the train and spoke to the hijackers rudely, calling them thieves and murderers for using her to get money from her dad. Their ringleader then explained to her the atrocities her father had committed and how farmers were victims of it. One of the crew members had grown up seeing how her father was maltreated, beaten, and stripped naked due to a delay in loan payments. He tried to be calm until his daughter left for school, and then he committed suicide. During his funeral, the bank agents came again for the loan payment, and they stripped her mother of her wedding necklace. This enraged the daughter so much that she hit one of the bank officials on the head with an axe. The passengers felt pity and had tears in their eyes, including Narmada, the businessman's daughter. There was a signal that the money had been paid, and now they had to return the train to its destination. The hijacker asked the lady he had shot to stand up, and the passengers were in awe that she wasn't dead. They then shared wraps with the passengers to cover their heads, just like their leader, and they all complied. The police force was ready to arrest them when the train arrived, but they were outsmarted and couldn't find them. The passengers reunited with their families, and the police force was not able to freeze the account the money was sent to, as it had already been distributed to 7 million farmers' accounts, serving as payment for their loans. The citizens were overjoyed, as some of them had contemplated suicide before hearing the news. Alia returned to her father safe and sound with a message from the hijacker, revealing his name as Vikram Rathore. This rang a bell for her father, as he remembered a war incident involving him. The police force apologized to him and promised to apprehend the hijacker in their next operation. The hijackers returned to their work, and the ladies were sent to prison. Their ringleader happened to be the head officer at the prison. He was called out to receive an award and made statements on how productive the inmates had become over the years. He urged them to continue the good work, and they all danced for a long period of time. Vikram had been put on blind dates to find love, and now there was another one. When he arrived at the venue, he met a little girl who happened to be the daughter of the lady he was matched with. She interrogated him and told him a lot of things she'd like her mum to do for her. Her mission was to find a father and a husband for her mum, and it seemed like she had already succeeded. She got his contact and invited him to a parents' meeting at her school. He attended, and while they were talking, her mum walked in. To Vikram's greatest surprise, it was Chief Narmada Rai. He introduced himself and tried to play along. Suji succeeded in matchmaking her mum and Vikram. Since Narmada loved her only daughter so much, she asked him to promise to always support her daughter, even if she was the only one against the world, and he agreed. She then consented and gave him a chance. The health minister organized a campaign for his upcoming election. He told many lies during his manifesto speech, claiming that during his former regime, he had repaired government hospitals, and they now had all the equipment, electricity, and skilled personnel to perform all kinds of operations. He even said that if he were shot right there would be no need to use a private hospital because the public hospital had all it takes. He kept bragging, challenging anyone to shoot him and see. Just then, a sniper shot was fired, and the minister got shot in the chest. They tried to rush him to a private hospital, but on arrival, they noticed he wasn't in the van. The hijacker's crew had already taken him to the public hospital and transmitted a video online, stating that the minister was abducted, and all they needed was for them to tell the truth that was covered up in that same hospital 3 years ago, or they should start planning the health minister's funeral. The police force had no choice but to order them to tell the truth on the internet. The press was present, and all the information was transmitted on all news platforms. 3 years ago, a total of 57 children died at the public hospital due to politicians' greed. They withheld oxygen that was needed to save the children's lives. The doctor had called repeatedly when they confirmed there was no oxygen and the children were going to die if it wasn't administered to them, but no one answered her pleas. The Minister for Health and top politicians in charge of the supply of oxygen to the hospital refused to provide it until their shares were complete. Hearing this, the doctor sought help from other sources while asking the nurses to use manual hand oxygen until she returned. After much pleading and several calls, she managed to obtain some oxygen, but it was already too late, the children had died. When the matter was taken to court, they lied against the doctor, claiming she was high on drugs, and therefore, 57 children died due to her addiction. They sentenced her to several years in prison and revoked her license. The minister confessed that it was due to their greed and not the doctor's fault. They reported to Vikram that they had done as he said, and he ordered them to equip 234 government hospitals with all the necessary machines and electricity they needed within 5 hours. All hands were on deck, and they hurriedly complied, providing feedback to him. He then asked for a chopper, but this time they came to arrest him. They fought his crew, and he eventually had to join them in fighting Narmada. Afterward, he joined his crew in the chopper, but Narmada managed to get hold of his mask. She ran DNA tests on the hair from the mask, and it showed it belonged to several people, which gave them insight. He usually wore a wig. Narmada wouldn't stop, so she ordered her team to keep working until they found something useful. Narmada went ahead to marry Vikram, and during the wedding ceremony, her team finally sketched Vikram's full face. They called her several times but couldn't reach her as she was busy with the wedding. After the wedding ceremony, Vikram planned to tell her everything. He tried to, but just then he received a phone call. Nirmala left so he could attend to it. She checked her phone and saw the sketch her team had sent to her. Shocked, she took out her gun, ready to confront him. She went to Vikram while he was on the call with the crew at the prison. She confronted him and then shot him immediately in his bicep area. Immediately, bullets flew in the house from different angles, and Vikram held Nirmala tightly, guiding her away from the bullets. Kaylee's men were fast and held Nirmala and Vikram captive. Hearing this through the call, his crew members took their weapons and headed toward the area to save their boss. Upon arrival, Nirmala and Vikram were tied up to separate chairs. They were beaten and got more harsh on Nirmala, thinking she had fooled them all along. One of the men shot her in the chest and kicked her from the chair. Vikram was angry, but he couldn't do much. The man pointed his gun at her again to shoot. Just as Vikram's crew was about to shoot him, a mysterious figure intervened with an axe. They looked shocked as they watched the man kill everyone in his way, revealing his face. He looked exactly like Vikram, which left his crew even more confused. After killing several people, he took Vikram in his arms and left. The crew saved Nirmala and left. The news was reported to Kaylee, the businessman. His brother was dead, and he wanted to avenge him. Nirmala now had a lot of information on who the ladies were. She needed more information from them, so she had to disguise herself as a prisoner to get the information she needed. She bid her daughter goodbye and went on the mission. Upon reaching the cell, she expressed her disdain for Azad, who had used her child to get to her, and now she was in prison because of him. They offered her water and went on to explain his history so she would understand. She needed to know Vikram Rathore and Aishwarya to understand Azad's story. He was a famous warrior and a policeman, and Aishwarya, his wife, also possessed fierce powers. Vikram was summoned to a war, and unfortunately for them, during the mission, their guns stopped functioning. Some of them were brutally killed, and one of them had to sacrifice his life by bombing the enemy that faced them with a machine gun. The rest of them escaped and were awarded. During Vikram's speech, he mentioned how their guns malfunctioned and that they needed to look into the production of the guns. The chief of police summoned the manufacturer, but he lied, saying the policeman didn't read the instructions on the guns since they were written in English, and they wouldn't understand. He offered to teach them how to use the new age weapons, but Vikram disagreed. He showed an example of what happened on the battlefield, and after confirming that they knew how to use the guns, they terminated their contract with the gun company. At night, Vikram returned home to his wife. Their dog wailed in joy, and he hugged his wife. The dog got jealous and started barking, but they sent it out and went into the room. They were about to make love when the lights went off with a loud bark from their dog. Vikram ran out to check what was going on but was suddenly injected with a fluid that made him weak. He kept fighting, but he couldn't do much as they held his wife and hit her on the floor. They took him, and when his wife woke up, she was welcomed by 3 policemen. They took all her husband's money, claiming he was involved in illegal activities. They urged her to sign a document so she would be set free, but she instead killed the 3 of them and was later arrested and sentenced to hanging. At the prison, she received information saying her husband was there to see her. She ran out happily, but to her surprise, he wasn't there. She met 2 men instead. They introduced themselves as gun producers and admitted to killing her husband. Vikram was now conscious in a chopper, and they signaled their boss that they had crossed the border. He shot Vikram several times and pushed him out of the chopper to die. The men still with his wife explained how they killed him and wished her to rest in peace when she would be executed later that day. It was now time to execute her by hanging, but she fainted. The doctors examined her and discovered she was pregnant. According to the law, a pregnant woman cannot be killed until the child is 5 years old, so the case was adjourned. Aishwarya was taken good care of by the prisoners and the warders. They donated their food so she could eat healthily, and after 9 months, she gave birth. She loved her son, named him Azad, and took care of him with the help of the women in the prison. Years passed, and Azad finally reached 5 years of age. She was ready to face her execution, and she asked her son to promise to take care of the prisoners when he gets older. She was hanged to death, and one of the prison warders took him as her child and raised him. Since he grew up, he took care of all of them as he would for his mother. Lakshmi stopped the story with tears in her eyes, and Narmada was also in tears. She demanded to see him, and Lakshmi assured her that he was in safe hands. Azad woke up seeing his father, and he felt fulfilled. Azad told his dad all that his mom had told him when he was much younger, but he was told his father couldn't remember anything. He could fight and perform other tasks but had no emotions. Azad hugged his dad, and his dad swore to fight by him, even if it would cost him his life. At the prison, Narmada was summoned for an interview after they listened to everything said through the device they had attached to her clothes. She was confused because that wasn't what they had planned initially. Then her team member Irani confessed that he also worked for Kaylee and had sent the sketch to him as soon as he found out. Irani had received orders from Kaylee to kill the prisoners until they told him their whereabouts and to avenge his brother by killing Narmada and her child. Azad, his father, and his men watched this through the monitoring device he had at the prison. They all went to save the prisoners and Narmada. Iran wanted to shoot Narmada, but Lakshmi took the bullet. Azad and his men got hold of them and killed them all. They tried to save Lakshmi, but she died, and Narmada took her place in the crew. They had a new mission, to hijack Kaylee's deal so he would be in danger. Kaylee mourned his brother, expecting feedback from Iran. He launched the vans to pay his side of the deal he had with a foreign investor. Azad, his father, and their men strategized and waited to hijack the vans. They took turns one after the other and fought Kaylee's men. When it seemed like they had conquered all, a large number of cars launched with more of his men. Vikram urged his son and the others to keep going while he and his men would take care of the rest. Unfortunately for them, they ran to a stop as they were on a mountaintop. The only way out was to comply, and they got caught by Kaylee's men. They were taken to him, and Kaylee prepared to kill all of them. Azad went live just in time, and they were confused. How could he be at two places at the same time, Kaylee thought. He then asked Vikram who he was, and he looked clueless, not understanding what was happening. His men then told Kaylee the person live on TV was Simba, and the one in front of him was Mufasa. Kaylee looked clueless, he was sure he had killed Vikram years ago. He tore his shirt looking for bullet wounds, and he found them. He was alive, and he then asked him to stop pretending like he didn't know who he was. He asked who he was, and Vikram smiled, saying, Santa Claus. His men laughed hard as they watched Kaylee make a fool of himself. Azad ordered for someone he could negotiate with, and Madhavan Nayak was brought on board. But he wanted to kill him, so he ordered 100 soldiers to get in and kill Azad. Azad and his team killed them all, sparing one, who was tasked to tell his master the story. He then ordered the head of state to sign a document, an executive order to shut down factories that polluted the country and brought about horrible diseases to the citizens. Azad knew the government would not comply, so he sent them 2 copies of voting machines. He had seized all of them with the help of the prison girls, who pretended to need a lift because one of them was in labor. That way, they hijacked the vans loaded with the voting machines. Without that, the citizens would not be able to vote. They could not consider making new ones because it takes several years for production. The head of state tabled the document to his team, and after much discussion, they decided that the factories caused bad health for the citizens, accidents, and were harmful to their country. So it was a good thing to close the factories, and the head of state signed the document. He ordered the closing of those factories, and they complied immediately. Kaylee's business partner called him, asking how they were supposed to open new factories when the ones already existing had been shut down. Kaylee pleaded with him to give him more time to fix things. Kaylee tortured Vikram's men. He needed them to tell him how to get into prison so he could kill Azad and his father for good. Azad placed his final demand. He wanted to speak to the citizens, and they put him on live. He told them he wasn't Vikram Rathore and explained how his father Vikram was killed for speaking the truth and his mother hanged. His father was labeled a traitor, and for years, he had tried to prove that his father was a good man. He then tore off his mask, revealing his real identity. He also addressed them on their habit of questioning everything but forgetting to do the same when it came to voting. Questions like, would he do the right thing, or how would my children's education be when this new person comes into power? He urged them to think properly and make the right choices when it involved voting because the outcome of their voting, whether good or bad, would last for the 5 years any selected candidate has in power. He was going to return the voting machines as promised when Kaylee came in with Vikram and his men brutally beaten. The girls were ordered to drop their weapons and go back to the cell rooms while he beat Azad brutally. He then tried to shoot Vikram, but his gun malfunctioned again. He tried several times, and it was the same. Hearing the sounds from the gun, Vikram remembered everything that happened, and he boiled with anger. Kaylee decided to kill him with his hands, but Vikram took over, beating him and killing his men. After a fierce battle, Azad and his dad conquered. They took Kaylee to the same spot where Azad's mother was killed, said the same words he said to her, and put the rope around his neck. Kaylee pleaded that they strike a deal instead of killing him, but they had no mercy. They executed him, and the country's peace was restored. Don't forget to subscribe as this encourages us to make more videos daily. It also helps with the YouTube algorithm. Please, like, share and subscribe. We love you and we'll see you in the next video.